At this time, I'd like to call the July Adams Central School District regular meeting to order. As meeting was properly noticed.
Yes, it has been.
If we could all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion been made that Joanne, second by Ted, to adopt the agenda. Is there discussion? Hearing none, the second vote, Joanne.
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Jim? Jim is excused for tonight, I'm sorry. Lena?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Lucas?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
My vote is yes, passes 8-0. Board of Education report. Anyone? I will say that I got a notice today from Public Health talking about meetings and possibly doing most meetings virtually or Zoom for the future as COVID has increased in the county quite a bit. I'll be talking to Leah about this in the future before our next meeting. If we do meet in person, they would like face mask at all time, and there's one other thing. Do you remember what it was, Tom?
I don't know.
But the memo was pretty specific of what they wanted, but I want to run it by Leah one more time. So with that, is there any other board reports? Hearing none, we'll go to Grant Services Coordinator, Crystal.
We're able to offer as of July 1st some in-person one-on-one counseling with the direction of Black Intern and some safety protocols that have been put in place, including one-on-one transport for students. So we do have 27 students that are seeing a therapist in person in our district office. We have 17 students who have chosen to remain telehealth, some for personal reasons, some because their therapist had opted to remain as a telehealth therapist. So we are offering those services to students. We are also coordinating with the county again this year for that Pineland summer service. We had originally set this up to have 10 students out there on Mondays and Wednesdays, 15 students out there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Once our county flipped to a high standing, we now are going one-on-one with students. So there will be 5 students in the morning with 5 adults guiding them with some one-on-one social interaction types of therapy services. And then we will flip those 5 students in the afternoon. So we are serving a total of 35 students at the Pineland Summer Camp this year. Again, that is under the guidance of Leah this time from the county, and kind of what we can put into place for transportation and safety measures for the students to help get them ready to come back to school. So I just wanted to make you aware of what was going on out there, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Question, Madam Clerk? Hearing no questions, thank you, Crystal. Moving on, District Administrator report.
Thank you. I've got a few things to report on before we start talking about our reopening plan. We have 181 out of approximately 200 staff surveys back, and it's interesting. Just going to hit a couple of the highlights. About 10% of our staff does not have usable internet at home, which severely limits our ability to connect with students when we move into a more virtual kind of environment. We asked the question, I feel comfortable returning to work if the following precautions are put into place. Students are masked, 62%. Adults are masked, 72%. Student traffic flow is controlled and limited, 78%. Students are seated 6 feet apart from each other, 59%. And limited or adjusted recess, 46%. We asked a question about, I'll just read the question. Please indicate your agreement with the following statement. I believe back-to-school planning needs to prioritize pre-K through 12th grade face-to-face daily instruction. 62% of the respondents either agree or strongly agree with that statement. 27% were neutral, and only 10% disagreed or strongly disagreed. And those are the highlights to date in the staff survey. That's still open. And so we'll be providing a more formal report when we get to that together next. The family survey we conducted, we have 344 responses, so we're pleased with that. Some of the highlights from the family survey, same question. I feel comfortable sending my student to school if the following precautions are put into place. Students are masked, 20%. Adults are masked, 27%. Student traffic flow is controlled or limited, 41%. Students are seated 6 feet apart, 33%. Limited or adjusted recess, 20%. Visitor volunteer access limited, 42%. I am comfortable sending my students without any safety measures in place, which we found interesting. 30% of the respondents said that they were comfortable sending their students to school without any additional safety measures. And then conversely, there are no safety precautions that the district could take for me to feel safe about sending my students to school. And about 17% of our parent responses to date said that we couldn't do anything in order that would make them feel safe sending their students to school. Just a couple other highlights. The one question I found interesting with parents, again, is please rate your level of agreement with the following statement. The Adams Friendship Area School District should open schools as normal on September 1st, 2020. 46% of our parents that have responded either agreed or strongly agreed with that statement, and 36% disagreed or strongly disagreed, and about 16% were neutral. So we're getting a real interesting mix of responses from both our staff and students regarding their comfort level with returning to school in the fall. And both of those surveys are open, so we'll use the data to inform our decision making as we move forward, and we're hoping that more and more people respond to the survey so we have the most accurate numbers that we can. Any questions about those surveys before I move on?
Go ahead, Kathy.
You did say then you will be able to obtain a more formalized, I wrote down some notes, but more formalized statistics of how the answers went, et cetera, when you close the survey?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have a series of slides for you. These were just kind of the highlights. We asked a number of questions on both surveys.
Okay, thank you.
If I could move on. If I could move on and talk about our reopening plan to date. Again, this has been constant fluctuation as we monitor information from the state, from our county public health official, as well as our school nurse, who's very involved in the development of this plan. A number of plans from districts across the state look exactly like ours. One district was out a little bit ahead of others in producing a plan, so many other districts kind of adopted the format, and we are one of those. So it's based on the plan from Stevens Point, with a lot of changes in place that are more Adams Friendship specific. So there's 17 slides. Mr. Pease said maybe I should cut that down, but we're going to try to get through these quickly. So the first slide I'm not going to talk about, it's just our plan. The second slide talks about our commitments, and I won't read each element, but We're very committed, obviously, to the safety of our students, to our staff, and the greater community. We want to be as flexible as possible with those groups that we consider stakeholders. And instruction needs to be our priority. We need to have the tools in place to reach and educate our students regardless of the mode of instruction that we're in at any given time. The third slide, our goal is to get students and staff back into the school building and classrooms safely. Our plan is to reopen schools with traditional classroom learning in consultation with the school nurse and Adams County health officials. We'll either use a traditional classroom setting, so open as normal, or a cohort model where we have students in pods together. We'll continue to provide professional development to our staff, and we'll use stakeholder input in order to inform our decision making. The fourth slide, there's a statement down there about consideration or recommendation to open schools, but we're not prepared to do that yet. So you're going to see this plan again in the near future. Operations, we talked about our physical spaces. We're working on creating physical barriers, floor adhesives that are directional, much more safety signage than we traditionally have in our schools. The recommendation is to not use drinking fountains, but only use water bottle filling stations. Have many more hand washing stations in schools. We're talking about bringing some portables into the middle school. Limiting or staggering the use of lockers, which is not what law enforcement recommends. They're recommending moving away from backpacks, but under the health concerns, we're talking about how we utilize locker space in our buildings, obviously creating space for social distancing, and the nurse already has isolation rooms identified and being worked on. Laura Ginter, by the way, is our school nurse, and she's been fantastic as we've been dealing with some of these issues, so I should recognize her. But we have isolation rooms in each of our buildings already created or identified and in the process of being created for students that may be ill at school. We're continuing to work on healthy environments overall, trying to find the most effective filters that we can on our air handling units, continuing to clean and disinfect our buildings, trying to focus on having individual supplies, so minimize shared objects in school, and minimize the number of students that are in communal spaces. I've already talked about hand hygiene and potentially bringing some hand washing stations, portable hand washing stations into the middle school, and talking about modifying our building layouts. Day-to-day operations, the sixth slide, obviously we're talking about limiting visitors in our buildings and volunteers. As much as we like to have those folks engaged with our school, at this time the recommendation is to minimize volunteers and visitors involved with the school district. Trying to pod classrooms into cohorts, so groups of students are with the same students throughout the day rather than a lot of the changes that historically occur in a building. Obviously, we regulate our entrances and exits a little bit differently. We might have to talk about traffic flow. Probably ask parents that are driving their students to stay in their vehicles and have the students delivered to the vehicles rather than parents getting out and coming into the buildings, which occasionally happens. Face coverings, we're still in conversation with health officials about face coverings, whether they'd be required for adults or students. Staffing, we're hoping the state would provide us some flexibility on staffing so that we could utilize people that are outside of their license area, which is historically a big deal in schools. But we believe in order to try to create pods with the least number of students, we'll have to be very creative with how we utilize our staff. Obviously, provide very limited or no exposure or alternatives to high-risk students or staff. that aren't able to be here because they're contending with an issue that would preclude them from coming to school. Building principals would serve as points of contact. We continue to communicate with students, staff, parents, and the public. And obviously, field trips and other large gatherings would be limited, probably not allowed for a while. Transportation, this is an area that's a really difficult issue for most school districts in and around us. Most districts have a statement that's similar to ours on our buses. Buses will socially distance students to the greatest extent possible, with families together, students in every other seat, and we do anticipate some buses in our district have a difficult time meeting the CDC requirements just because of first of all, how geographically large we are, and the number of buses that we have traveling really across Adams County. It's difficult for us to transport kids to begin with, our students to begin with. It would be very difficult for us to meet the CDC requirements. And a number of our neighbors have a similar statement in their reopening plan as well. We provide some professional development for our drivers, and we're continuing to contend with the driver shortage. So if anyone's interested in driving bus, we'd be pleased to direct you to our transportation partner, Cobus, and we're continuing to look for people. We'll do a different level of cleaning after each route. Obviously, students with special needs and special transportation needs, that would be an IEP team decision. So we have to work with the IEP team and our special education and pupil service providers in order to create a schedule for those individuals. And the drop-off and pickup zones for parents might need to be modified. We're probably going to be asking parents to stay in cars and having staff bring students out or having students walk out to individual vehicles rather than kind of the situation that currently exists. The instructional models, and we're really talking about still three instructional models. The first is using a traditional classroom setting. And within the traditional classroom setting, we could start one of two ways depending on recommendation. The first would be starting as normal. The second would be starting in cohort pods. And in both of those scenarios, we have students in our buildings every day of the week. And I don't need to read each of those sections to you. The second model would be an AB blended learning model where we would divide students in half. We'd have half the number of students on our buses and half the number of students in our buildings. The A group would come to school on Mondays and Tuesdays, and the B group would either come on Wednesday and Thursday or Thursday and Friday. There's some debate about what's best for cleaning. And again, our school nurse is working on what that might look like. And we do that from kindergarten through the high school, follow an A-B schedule just to minimize the number of students in the classrooms. And then the third option is completely non-traditional instruction. And some districts have the luxury of saying virtual instruction, and that is just not the case in our school district because of the number of students that don't have access to workable internet. Even if we utilize our buildings as an internet hub, it doesn't necessarily mean that our students can get to our buildings to utilize and access the internet that we can provide to them. Getting there, slide 11. I don't need to say much. I believe on a personal level that we'll be moving between these models periodically throughout the school year as our risk level in Adams County or across the state changes. So we're going to be asking parents, students, and our staff to be flexible with us because it could change very, very quickly, almost like a snow day, as an example. Slide number 12, this is something that we've talked about. Later in tonight's meeting, administration is going to be recommending a vendor to the board for a completely virtual K-12 model. We believe that we know that there'll be a number of students that won't be able to attend school, and this will be a more formal model for those individuals. We also know that we have a number of individuals who live in Adams County who would be students of ours who have elected to open enroll. Over 30 of our students are open enrolling to other virtual models, other virtual programs. So they might be sitting in the Village of Friendship and attending school in McFarland as an example, or Medford, or Grantsburg, or Waukesha. Those are 4 of the big ones. The vendor that we've selected is, we believe, a better option for students than the Wisconsin eSchool Network or the Wisconsin Virtual School Network. And we'll be talking more about that in a little while and asking the board to approve that so we can get that going. Special education, slide 13. Again, the IP team or a 504 team creates programming and planning for each of those individuals, and we'll continue to follow that process in order to provide students the skill building activities they need to be successful both in school and in life. We'll continue to try to meet the social and emotional health needs of our students. We'll focus on reboarding. Kids have been out of school since March 13th, Friday, March 13th. So we'll talk a little bit about what that might look like with our staff and students. Obviously continuing to work on climate and culture, providing universal instruction regarding social and emotional learning skills, provide students breaks throughout the day, resources, wellness activities that focus on both students and staff, and continue to communicate as we move between models. Extracurricular activities, we know that extracurricular activities play a role in the social and emotional health of our students, and we look for guidance from the WIAA, the DPI, National School, Sports and Extracurricular Activity Organizations, Forensics Band, Mock Trial, all those things as well, FFA, and continue to try to communicate with the student, staff, and families in the community as we move forward. And then there's kind of a breakdown on slides 16 and 17. 16 is talking about moving between models. There's a lot of text there, but we're trying to ensure that we be able to move between models pretty seamlessly and make sure that students wouldn't be missing large parts of instruction as we did that. We also know, and I should have mentioned earlier, we have a number of staff persons with young children. And if we go to an AB model, cohort model, the second of the 3 models, we might have some staffing needs to address as well. And the final slide is really just how we will continue to provide professional development to our staff to try to continue to get better, both at from a traditional instruction perspective, if we have to move to a blended model, and then if we have to move to more non-traditional instruction.
Questions? Go ahead, Kathy.
I have a couple, if that's
Go ahead.
okay.
Yep.
Will our school conduct a screening measure, such as temperature checks, anything, as staff and children are coming in? Will there be any screening measures if we open up totally?
The advice that we're getting is that we provide guidance to parents and the screening occurs at home. We have a large percentage of our students that will be on buses before they get to the school building. So really it starts with home. The onus of that process is going to be on individual families, most likely. That is the current recommendation.
Will Culberson use a screening measure on their bus drivers? As they will have a lot of contact with our
I think the screening measure that we use with our staff, kind of a home self-assessment before each day, the bus drivers will be using as well.
We have the luxury of having an empty building, Grand Marsh. I had spoken to you about this and there wasn't any decision made. Would we be able to use Grand Marsh to spread out children even more, especially if we have to go down to cohorts where perhaps at Grand Marsh we might be able to reach the students with the highest needs in a more one-to-one, if we could spread the students out more.
I don't know if students in Grand Marsh are students who have the highest needs to begin with. We've talked about utilizing Grand Marsh as a possibility. One of the issues is it would alter, again, the transportation that we're planning. But safety will be the priority. We've had conversation about utilizing Grand Marsh again next year. There are no current plans for the utilization of that building for the 2021 school year.
And I didn't quite understand how isolation rooms are going to be used.
So that was a recommendation from the Wisconsin School Nurses Association. So the nurses generally have a room in each of our buildings and with a bed on it. And the recommendation was to create a second room for students that are presenting COVID-related symptoms. So we're in the process of, those rooms have been identified, and we're in the process of putting furniture in them.
So it's for students who are presenting.
Correct.
Okay, got it. I know a lot of work has gone into this, but I, as a community member, school board member, and grandparent, had other questions. Could we create a frequently asked question page? Because I had a lot of other questions, like, for example, if a teacher has 5 classes in the high school and tests positive, does that mean all of her students would then have to stay home and quarantine for 15 days or 14 days? What if someone in the home has COVID? Does that teacher have to stay home? I mean, there are so many questions. And I know you can't answer those because we're going to look for the direction of public health. But I thought if we could, as a district, communicate that these are questions that are frequently asked, here are a response, or give community parents an opportunity to ask those questions and get answers. Would that be a possibility?
Sure, and we're working on forms right now for families and staff that address most of the scenarios that have been discussed across the state. So we'll have those on our website very soon. And again, I would welcome questions, comments, and concerns from the public, and we can try to create some kind of a page on our website maybe to share information.
Right, because I had someone ask, they are substitute teachers, and they substitute in multiple schools. What if they're diagnosed with COVID and they have gone to multiple schools? And I said, I don't have any of these answers. I'm hopeful that we could create something where those kinds of questions could be responded to, or at least a direction given to both staff and community parents and community people.
Correct, and we're working on there's examples of those that are, I received a number of them last Friday, and we're working on creating those right now. I think one of our district office staff spent most of the day working on exactly what you're talking about. There's as many scenarios that exist out in society are going to exist in schools.
And I guess my last question is, if a staff member has a compromised immune system or underlying conditions and is very nervous about returning, will we have a place for them in our educational instructional model?
We're hoping so. We already have 2 of the 181 staff persons that have already responded to our survey. We have 2 individuals that have expressed us that they would be unable to come to school. So we're trying to work with a number of individuals to ensure that they're maintained whole to the greatest extent possible. And we're also working with a number of districts that are dealing with the same question.
And I'm sure this will be part of your page too, but if we should have an outbreak, do we have an estimate of when we would have to close down? is there any direction given on that, or are we just going to take it as it comes and hopefully know how to respond?
The best guidance that we're getting now is to take it as it comes, and literally we might change as quickly as a snow day. So parents might wake up one morning and we're moving to a different form of instruction.
Okay, thank you.
Lucas?
Is there a communication process in place for notifying parents and families of a positive test within the school?
That would follow through the county process. They'd assist our school nurse in doing contact tracing for students.
So the communication would come through them, or would it come through the school?
It would probably come through the school and the county health department at the same time.
Lena?
I'm just asking about flexible seating at the schools. So a lot of the classrooms have been changed to what they typically were like with flexible seating. Are we considering going back to more traditional desks so they're easily sanitized? How will we sanitize couches and so forth?
And couches and things don't lend themselves to social distancing. So yes, we're talking about moving back to more traditional environments in our classes just for the safety of our students and staff.
Okay, and I just have one more question. For communication, it talks about, the vital communication. Is there a tool we're gonna use mostly like email or like the surveys that came through on email, they're not on Facebook. Are we gonna use one specific one to make sure we're reaching all families?
Probably every mode when we do communicate, it'll be very much like a snow day like. I should also add, I'm in communication with the school districts across CESA 5. Most are hoping to make a final decision either the first week in August or the second week in August based on when their boards meet. And we know that that's very late for parents to make plans. So we're going to encourage parents to start planning for all three scenarios, which we realize is not convenient.
Do we know how many children in our district do not have internet? I don't remember.
We didn't add that to this survey, but we added it to the registration form because we want to get that information from every family. If 10% of our staff don't have workable internet, I would multiply that by 4 or 5 when considering our students. Which is, it's been my political issue for the last 2 months when I'm talking to our elected officials and representatives from professional organizations like Wisconsin Association of School Board, my professional association. I believe the state needs to attack rural internet service like it attacked rural electricity in the 1930s. 1929, only 10% of rural communities in the state of Wisconsin had electricity. Most of that was based on individual homes that had dams or mills to create it. By 1939, almost 90% of Wisconsin rural Wisconsin had electricity. But it took a really very concerted effort from our elected officials to get that done, and they used a co-op model. And I believe it's an equity issue, it's an economic development issue, and it needs to be a priority of the people we've elected to put in Madison.
Lucas?
Is there anything we can do to help families that may not have face coverings, may not have thermometers? If we can't provide that to them, is there resources that we can?
We've already received through a federal grant face masks and thermometers, I believe, for every family in the district. We're talking about looking at face coverings. There's an industry that's developed now for logoed face masks, so we could get the green double logo on face masks as an example. And we're talking about what that looks like. The recommendation is for it to have families wash those, but we're concerned about some of those hygiene issues as well. So again, I feel like it's late in the game, but I will tell you that I was on a telephone conference with a number of superintendents at 8:30 this morning, and everyone's kind of in the same boat.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Is there any estimate on our budget for these PPEs that we may need for staff and students? And anything else that you're doing in order to safely isolate students and staff and erect these plexiglass things?
We received some money through the CARES Act. We're also talking about adding a staff person at each level. The dollars we receive will quickly evaporate. And we're hoping that we receive the same money from the state as we move forward. We were told to actually budget a decrease in our funding when we know we're going to have added expenses.
What kind of staff member would you be adding?
A teaching level staff person at each level to try to provide a little bit more flexibility and create a little bit more distance.
Any other questions? Hearing no more questions, we'll go on. At this time, we consider adjournment to closed session. Is there a motion? Consideration of adjournment to closed session. Consideration of adjournment to closed session. Hearing no motion, we'll move on. Motion for the consent agenda.
Second.
Jeff? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Joanne? Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Joanne to approve the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight is the retirement of Gary Gould, resignation of Jose Brazizi, boys soccer coach, higher recommendation for Nikki Britt, higher recommendation for Alexa Burton, hiring recommendation for Keith Horton, boys varsity basketball coach, hiring recommendation for Rick Clark, boys varsity soccer coach. Also the meeting minutes for regular and policy, and also the June bills. Discussion. Go ahead, Kathy.
I just have one question, and I think Stacy will amend it. One of the hiring recs did not have complete information on it. The one for AFE elementary teacher did not have salary, nor the recommendation of why this particular individual was hired. So I think she will add that later on.
And that was my oversight. I negotiated the salary with this individual, and Mrs. Irie had created the recommendation, and I didn't get it transferred over and dismissed it.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll start this vote with Ken.
Yes.
Lana?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Lucas?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
And I'll abstain from the vote. It passes 7-0-1. Moving on, policy committee report. Lana?
The policy committee met on June 22nd.
You have to,
Lena, yep.
I'm muted. All right, the policy committee met on June 22nd, and the following policies were reviewed and voted on to go into policy. 7530.02, staff use of personal communication devices. 8760, student accident insurance. 0142.40, 2260.02, English language proficiency. 2340.01, district support for co-curricular activities. 2411, school counseling and academic and career planning. 2541, program or curriculum modifications. 3111, creating a position. 4111, creating a position. 3132, 4132, vacancies. 5340, student accident, illness, concussion. 5710, student complaints. 5830, student fundraising. 6152, student fees, fines, and charges. 6470, payment of invoices. 6473, Operation, 6610 Student Activity Fund, 6830 Audit, 7300 Disposition of Real Property, 7310 Disposition of Personal Property, 7434 Use of Tobacco on School Premises, 7455 Fixed Assets, 7540.01 Technology Privacy, 8210 School Calendar, 8330 Student Records, and 9600 Student Staff Participation in Community Events. And we would make the motion to move those to second reading, to policy.
Is there a second?
Awesome.
Melissa? Motion made by Lana, second by Melissa to approve the following policies. I'll just read the numbers to put them in the record. 7530.02, 8760, 0142.4, 2260.02, 2340.01, 2411, 2451, 3111, 4111, 3132, 4132, 5340, 5710, 5830, 6152, 6470, 6510, 6610, 6830, 7300, 7310, 7434, 7455, 7540.01, 8210, 8330, 9600. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, we'll start this vote with Lena.
Yes.
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 Melissa?
Yes.
Lucas?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, it passes 8-0. Moving on to Edmonton online program and quote.
After a lot of conversation and discussion and vetting some other options that exist, administration would like the board to consider purchasing the Edmonton program as our K-12 online learning option for students. Again, we don't think it's necessarily going to replace the quality of the experience that our students receive in our traditional brick and mortar settings. But at the same time, we believe there are students that won't be able to come back to our schools. And we also are trying to make connections with families that have elected to open enroll to other virtual programs right now in order to try to bring some of those students back. So we believe it's a viable option. We've had a relationship with the Edmonton Corporation at the high school level for a number of years. We've utilized the program for credit recovery for some of our students that aren't progressing. We've also used it for some of their advanced placement, so more advanced classes as well as an option. I just want to kind of hit some highlights on some of the slides. Again, this would be a program that would serve students from kindergarten. They do not have a pre-K program. Kindergarten through 12th grade. At the kindergarten through 3rd or 4th grade level, there is an expectation that families spend between 2 and 4 hours a day assisting with their children in this. So it's really designed for families that are committed to homeschooling as well. Once students get to 4th or 5th grade and they transition from learning to read to reading to learn, it's a much more independent program. It's very comprehensive, basically mirroring the experience in a traditional school building. They've got a nice slide about the teachers that they hire and utilize. These are teachers that all they're doing is working online, so they're familiar with the processes and procedures of online education. Please stop me if you have any questions. At the K-5 level, the curriculum is called the Calvert Learning Curriculum. And again, it focuses on the content areas and electives that you've experienced in a traditional elementary setting. It's project-based. And it looks like, again, a very viable option. The slide with 612, that's a cross-section. They talk about constructivist learning, so it's not necessarily rote memorization, but trying to piece learning together. It's very brain-based. They have a skill mastery focus, utilize practice, real-world applications. It's rigorous, relevant, and complex. It's a multimodal, even though it's online. They try to utilize lots of different learning modes with students. And they develop passion, perseverance, and grit. I believe, again, we do as well in our brick and mortar experiences. The coursework, courseware, the software package that they utilize is flexible and it's customizable. It's aligned to state standards, as is our curriculum. It's a constructivist learning approach, which I've already talked about. They talk a lot about data visualization for students. They provide progress and pacing guides, which are very valuable as well. And it's basically a comprehensive school program that exists online. The next slide talks about the resources that they have available for each student. One of the big things when you're suggesting that students go online for any reason is safety. So they've really done a good job of ensuring student privacy and safety, so that you're not opening up children to some of the ills that exist in society. And the final slide to kind of talk a little bit about some of the highlights of their program. So that's the first slide. Again, we vetted this. We've been on the telephone with 3 different individuals, a teaching staff person, a marketing person, and more of a development person with this company probably 3 or 4 times over the last month and a half. And again, we believe it will be a viable option for some of our students and families as we move forward.
Questions?
The next, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So, on the proposal, is it 50 students then? That's what this contract is for, up to 50 students?
It is up to, correct, the proposal is for up to 50 students, but there's a cost discount after 50 students. So at 8 students, if we capture 8 students this fall, we break even, considering the money that we would lose if they were to open enroll somewhere else that had a K-12 virtual option. So anything after 8 students, we're to the positive.
And is it, I'm sorry, follow-up question?
Yep.
Is it, so potentially, let's say they don't start at the beginning of the year, but come more towards the, is it prorated then, or is it always that flat cost?
I think it's that cost, but people can enroll at any point in time during the semester, any day they could enroll into this program.
Lucas?
Yeah, I got a couple of different questions. Could you go into a little bit of detail about what the line items mean? I don't know. So like the registration and the advertising, what does that mean?
Okay, they would help us targeting families that have elected to leave our district and open enroll, and they've got a plan and process in place. And then there's basically a registration process, and they build a virtual screen. So if any families in our area, we can kind of expand the screen as we would want. As any families in our area would get online and explore virtual options, they would be able to capture that and then direct messaging to those families. And I don't know enough about the tech world and how that works, but that's what they try to do. You know, the other thing, which is kind of a really fine line, is, you know, obviously, and I'll use McFarland as an example. I worked for many years with their business manager and consider him a friend. They are very predatorial. They're predators when they market this information for their school. We have over 20 students in Adams Friendship that are technically students in the McFarland School District. We believe we can provide a better option for them closer to home. And if there are students, if they wanted to play in the band with our band, they could do that. We wouldn't provide them transportation in the middle of the day, but they could do that. They could participate in co-curricular activities because they would be one of our students. And again, we think that would be a win-win for those families as well.
And then the other question I had was, is there a resource at Edmonton, or because if I'm a parent and I have a student that may be interested in this, and I really want to have a deep dive conversation about the program, who do they reach out to? Is there a resource?
Through the registration process, and if you have questions or concerns, they have a link where people can talk to them. So we're waiting for approval tonight, and once we do that, we start activating this. Probably include it on our webpage at some place, some level as an option for families. One of the things the board should be aware of is this is kind of an example of building an airplane while we're flying. We're going to have to create some different graduation requirements for students that would look to enter this program because it's semester-based, we're trimester-based, the credits are a little bit different. So in our handbooks and policy, we'll probably have to make some changes.
Ken, this is a quote for 1 year, correct?
Correct.
Is there any future obligations, any time for years after this?
No, but we've had a relationship at the 9-12 level with this company for a number of years already. So we anticipate that this would be something that we continue into the future. I can't tell you exactly when, but we look at it year by year, obviously. But I don't anticipate this mode of learning going away, particularly in the next couple of years.
Could we use this program to become that predatory school?
There's a fine line when you're talking about something like that. When I hear some of our neighboring districts going to our direct west advertising on Wisconsin 106 about how fantastic their school district is prior to the school year, I'm not a big fan of that. So there's a possibility that we could utilize this. So any student across the state of Wisconsin could enroll to our program and become an Adams Friendship School District student. And
So, if a student from Westfield enrolled in it, could they participate in our co-curriculum?
I don't know the exact answer to that.
Kathy?
If we have to go completely into the virtual mode, is this what we will use for K-12?
No, because our existing teachers would already be working in a virtual environment.
Okay. Number two, would there be a way to create a local liaison so that if I were a parent, I mean, it's one thing to have a stranger teacher, teaching my kids, but I knew when we created a virtual online credit recovery, we often had someone on staff that could also be a contact person as well as a support person, especially for parents who may be struggling, and even just as a support from Adams Friendship, which I think would be a real bonus when you're trying to market this new program to those who are going elsewhere. You have someone on site here that might be a liaison.
Already identified. So the individual at the high school who runs this program for our high school students, we've been talking to that individual since January, I think, or I think Mr. Preston brought this up either in January or February, and we've been talking with that individual, and it would be part of his teaching role would be to serve as a local liaison with the Edmonton Corporation.
Lana?
So when we had students taking it during the school year, did they have to pay, or did the school pay for the classes they took? Was that already in a contract somewhere?
We were already paying for the program.
So can our high school students still take classes and it's in that bid, or is it a separate bid?
I believe our high school students could continue. I believe we'll still utilize parts of this program for credit recovery. And if there's a class option potentially that one of our students would want to explore, we'd certainly be interested in talking to them and their families about that.
So high school students could still do it just like they have been in the past years? This is the same program that's offered classes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then my only other thought was we may want to, are there children in our district that are compromised that may want to sign on to this right at the beginning of the school year rather than, and we might want to publicize that we have this for them? So,
And those are the two families I was talking about. We know there are going to be students that can't come to school for whatever reason related to COVID-19. Either they are compromised in some way, they live with a family member that's compromised in some way. So that would be one of the two groups that we target. So the first group would be those that are either exploring or already open enrolled elsewhere. And then the second group would be individuals that we know aren't going to be able to come into our buildings in the fall.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Will you have that marketing person reach out to those 30 students so they can sell their program to these people as a possibility, as well as indicating again we'll have a local person be a liaison?
We already have a local person on staff who's been contacting those families this summer, and then we piggyback that activity with the work from the Edmonton people.
Do you know of other districts that are using the elementary? We're familiar with the 9 through 12, but the elementary part of it through middle school?
There's a lot, yeah, we've got second graders that are open enrolled to McFarland. They're using a different program, but yes, we talk to districts that are utilizing it.
I just have one more follow-up on to the liaison contact. It says in our responsibilities that we can engage that we have to have a program administrator. Is that with that person?
Yes.
Okay.
With that, is there a motion? Lenny, Lena, was that you? Okay. Motion made by Lena, is there a second?
Second.
Kathy. Motion made by Lena, second by Kathy to approve Edmonton online program for the quote. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll start this vote with Kathy.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Lena.
yes.
And my vote is yes, it passes 8-0. Dasher Management Services and Dasher Management Proposal. I went to Tom today asking that we possibly table this tonight so we could possibly get bids from other services also. I also asked him if it would be possible that we would just open it up and see what type of applicants we would get. So with that, I'll move it over to Tom, and then maybe he can also explain the proposal itself.
Sure. The basic part of the proposal, I've had an opportunity to work with Dasher Management Services in my previous district. In my previous district, we moved directly from, like what Adams Friendship did with their busing contract, they moved directly to basically the employees moving over to the busing contract. That was never the intent of this. Our Dasher is a professional cleaning and maintenance organization. The owners live outside of Wisconsin Dells. They work in 25 school districts, I believe, in the state of Wisconsin, in Minnesota, and basically third-party contract custodial buildings and grounds and maintenance positions. So what we had talked about with Dasher as an option would be to hire a buildings and grounds director through Dasher, and then as our current employees elected to leave us or retire, they would be replaced by Dasher employees. You'll see two slides there. Dasher tries to hire locally. They deal with all personnel issues. They provide a full-time site manager. They provide training, accountability. They manage employees. They do the daily cleaning of all facilities. They disinfect all facilities. Daily maintenance requests of all facilities. They check the boilers, manage maintenance contractors, do preventive maintenance, mowing and trimming outside, snow removal, landscaping, construction project management, detailed summer cleaning, floor refinishing, finishing gym floors, cleaning up when children are ill, unclogging and cleaning toilets. They do a variety of activities that pretty much our current custodial staff would do. So the intent would not be to eliminate any of our current custodial staff. Our intent would not be to move any of our current custodial staff members from district employees to Dasher employees. But if you read the contract, it would be as our current employees left, they would move over to Dasher. And I will tell you, having worked with Dasher in the past, the professionalism that they exhibit is exemplary. It was a great company to work with.
Questions for Tom? Okay.
We can ask right now before, on this particular group. Okay, I had some questions that the $98,000 that was in the contract is for one position. And I guess you had said something in an email to us that we would be saving money.
Correct.
Could we see how that is? Could you give us a report on that? So
Absolutely.
you can explain to us how we're going to save money
Sure.
on that as well. This individual appears to have only 40 hours. Would this individual be more of a person who sits in an office and designates? Or is it going to be this type of individual that works shoulder to shoulder out there, snow plowing, etc.?
I'll be happy to show you the breakdown of the finances, and the individual, in my experience, works shoulder to shoulder.
If they work beyond 40 hours, we read also that they get an overtime of 30% of beyond what they're making for that salary. So if they start snow plowing at 4 o'clock in the morning, they're going to be taking overtime.
Potentially, yes.
Who is the direct supervisor for that individual?
The Dasher management would be in consultation with me.
All right, so they will be reporting to Dasher and not, see, I'm one that likes a local control. I see this as, it worked for the bus service, but I see this position very differently. And as I read it, it appears the school district doesn't have an opportunity to agree or not agree with the choice that we're given. Dasher just hires and then says, this is your building and grounds person. Is that correct?
No, I was involved in every aspect of the hiring for Dasher in my previous position.
Does the board approve?
No.
No. Okay. I think there was a concern about the 3-year term. Could we try it for 1 year and see if it works and then extend a contract, or is the 3-year non-negotiable?
I don't know. I mean, Mike would be, the owner of the company would be more than willing to come to a
I also read in the contract that all of our supplies, all of our equipment has to be supplied by us.
Correct.
As well as if anything breaks or if they want something from us, we purchase it. So that's why I'm asking, where are we saving the money? Because this individual, it appears we're going to have to contract out for electrical or plumbing or any other projects we might have in the future.
It's possible.
So any of the discretionary funds that we had that we saved because we were doing that internally, we will no longer have.
Dasher makes their money when they do like the full-scale change like you did with the bus company here, they would make more money. So that's what they'd be looking for over time. And they save on salary and benefits over time.
So that 98,000 is salary plus benefits?
Correct.
And they offer the benefits, not us?
Correct.
Thank you.
And anyone else? Go ahead, Jeff.
So is your intent then tonight just to table this, or?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and just a follow, so are you going like, just doing an RFP then, essentially?
Correct, we'd be looking for bids.
Okay, and are you going to not only bid that, but potentially janitorial services so that we can see if we enter a long-term contract like this one is, what that cost may be potentially for a
I
position?
could provide that.
Okay.
And the other thing would be, the question is, do you want to direct me the most local at the same time?
Go ahead.
If we post locally, then we are not going to use that.
I said at the same time. So you could explore both options for.
Okay. But if we decide to post and those candidates post in for that position, then we would do our own hiring and supervising of that individual. Is that what you're saying?
If that's the direction you elected to go, yes.
Okay. Well, I would recommend that we post locally.
We post locally and still obtain other bids. Go ahead.
I think one of the concerns is that our local staff now does a lot of things that are kind of above and beyond. And I think people are really happy with the quality that we have today. And so I'm wondering if we had a list of all the duties that our staff has today, like very detailed, and then we could take that to Dasher and say, put a check mark by which ones you're going to do so we know where the gap is. And then I would like to see that gap before we make a decision. So if that gap's huge, then we have a lot of activities to cover, we need to figure out how to cover that. Or we need to decide if we're going to live without that. So I don't know if that's something that we've done yet or if that's something that we can do.
Sure, I have not seen like daily job and task lists for custodial staff, so I'll have to ask for that.
Why not?
So just thinking of what the school year is going to look like, we're going to have to increase sanitizing classrooms a lot more. Are we, and I don't believe that was done in past years to the extent we're going to be going. Do we already need to increase our staffing in our janitors? Will we be paying, when we move more over to this agency, are they going to be hiring? And then are we going to have to pay them 30% overtime? So I'm just wondering what that would look like, because I'm guessing it's going to be new to our staff this year, cleaning, sanitizing classrooms, and hours are going to increase drastically from what I know how classrooms were previously cleaned. So it makes me a little bit, how many new staff do we need realistically to make sure our classrooms are ready and clean? Because I would think they need to be cleaned every night after students leave. So I just feel like we have so many open-ended questions for our own staff, and then yet opening up with another agency. I'm getting kind of nervous on how many new staff we need in the janitorial area.
Correct, we've been talking about that as well in the school.
So if we went with this agency, those new staff would be hired under Dasher. Correct?
Possibly, yes.
Kathy, you have a comment?
So,
You good?
yeah.
So we'll leave this on the, till next month it'll go under old business. And if you have more questions, please contact Tom. So we've got a month to get this stuff together. And I think the direction now is to get other bids and also open it up, Tom.
All right,
With that, moving on. Consideration to adjourn under closed session. Considering adjournment to closed section of section 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which a governmental body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibility. To wit, district administrator's yearly evaluation. Is there a motion? Joanne? Is there a second?
Second.
Jeff? Discussion. Hearing none, we'll start this vote with Melissa.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
Ted.
Yes.
Lena.
Yes.